Hello, Mr. Cruz. Welcome to the French Revolution documentary.
By Tania, Almanza, Aracely, Camacho, and Yasmin Hernandez.
What was the French Revolution, you might ask? The French Revolution was an uprising in France against the monarchy from 1789 to 1799, which resulted in the establishment of France as a republic. This began on July 14, 1789, when revolutionaries stormed a prison called Bastille. Some of the causes on why this started were the rise of Enlightenment royals, food scarcity years before the revolution began, resentment of royal absolutism, national debt caused by inequitable system of taxation, and more. What were the three estates? Before the start of the revolution, the French people were being divided into three groups, which were the clergy, the nobility, and the common people. The clergy was considered the highest on the social ladder, possessed an enormous amount of power, and made up 0.5% of the population, and owned 10% of all the land in France. The nobility made up 1.5% of the population and were the richest of the nobility, held top jobs in government such as army and courts, not required to pay taxes. The common people made up 98% of the population and were made up of many different groups of people. The top were the bourgeois, which was the middle class, which included bankers, merchants, lawyers, doctors, journalists, and professors. The middle class were the peasants. It was 9 out of 10 of the class. Bottom was city workers, which were overworked and underpaid and objected the most of the living conditions.
Economic crisis and weak leadership, efficient spending, government spending more than it takes in debt, war, American Revolution, loans needed to be paid back with interest, poor harvests, not enough food, prices soar, hunger, extravagant spending. Louis XVI built the palace at Versailles. Weak leadership, Louis XVI responsible for most of France's debt. Louis XV only made debt worse, and Louis XIV, weak and indecisive, wouldn't stand up to the first and second estates.
Failure to reform. Louis hired an advisor to peace occurred, which suggested a reduction in spending and taxing the first and second estate, then fired the advisor. Still under pressure to reform, Louis called a meeting from the Estates General. All three estates prepared cashier's notebooks listing their grievances for the meeting in May 1789. Voting problem each estate would meet separately and vote as a group. Each estate had one vote. The first and second estate would always outvote the third estate by 2 to 1. The third estate wanted to meet together as a single body with votes counted by a head. New voting procedure was rejected. Claiming they represented the people of France, the third estate declared themselves a National Assembly. Delegates from the first and second estate were invited to join the National Assembly. Few days later, the National Assembly finds its meeting hall locked. Therefore, they gathered at a tennis court instead. They took the tennis court oath, promised not to disband until they have written constitution for France. Causes and effects. The long-term causes was a corrupt, inconsistent, and insensitive leadership. Prosperous members of the third estate resented privileges of the first and second estates. It spread of Enlightenment ideas. The effects for the long term were Napoleon gained power, Napoleonic Code established, and French public schools were set up. French conquest spread nationalism, revolutions occurred in Europe and Latin America. Immediate causes were the huge government debt, poor harvest and rising price of bread, dear God, failure of Louis XVI to accept financial reforms, and the formation of National Assembly. This led to the storming of Bastille. The effects were Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen adopted. France adopts its first-written constitution. Monarchy was abolished, and the revolutionary France fights coalition of European powers.
What was the end result for the French Revolution? The Committee of Public Safety War's effort was realizing unimaginable success. French armies, especially those led by young General Napoleon Bonaparte, were making progress in nearly every direction. Napoleon's forces drove through Italy and reached as far as as far as I'm sorry about that. As far as Egypt before facing a deflating defeat. In the face of his rout and having received word of political upheavals in France, Napoleon returned to Paris. He arrived in time to lead a coup against the Directory in 1799, eventually stepping up and naming himself First Consul, effectively the leader of France. With Napoleon at helm, the revolution ended and France entered a 15-year period of military rule.
What can we learn in 2019 from the French Revolution? The French Revolution is one of the most important events in human history. The long-term impact on French was profound, shaping politics, communities, religion, and ideas. When someone is starting a revolution, they have hope that an improved future would come out of it. They believe in the possibility of making something good out of a horrible situation. The people of today should learn from the mistakes of this revolution, so they won't have to go through it again. Unfortunately, many do. Society should be grateful that we have been confronted with such choices, in such circumstances, and with such tragic consequences as they are in their own lives.
Finally, do the working class people of France at this time have anything in common with the working class in America in 2019? Many have wondered this. And the truth is that the working class in France in 1789 is similar to the working class in 2019 in the United States by having a social class within the working class. I'm sorry. Even though they all work, they can be divided into different categories depending on the amount they earn and how much they work. This is due to inequality and certain ideas that society has upon different jobs. Many that work out in the streets are paid minimum wage compared to some that work in an office simply because of the work that they do. And also, when someone works in a restaurant, they're paid less, even though they have to deal with crazy customers because because they just it's hard work, but they only get paid less than expected.
Thank you for watching this documentary.
We hope you enjoyed and learned something about the French Revolution.
Bye.